Tonight on Ukraine Today, Russia under fire. Local so-called media report a massive fire at the Dorogobuzh chemical plant in the Smolensk region. Nuclear provocation. The Institute for the Study of War says Russia may stage such an incident to blame Ukraine. Double standards from the White House. Why did Ukraine receive a demarche from the United States? Peace or capitulation? Why are the US not supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity? All this and more, right now. Hello, I'm Volodymyr Robchun and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, like this video, and let's move to the news. Let's begin with events in the Smolensk region. According to Russian so-called media, the Dorogobuzh chemical plant is on fire. Its main product is ammonium nitrate. It is widely used in agriculture and, what is more relevant for today's Russia, in the production of explosives. So yes, this is an absolutely legitimate target. Earlier, there was a strike on the Kalekino oil pumping station in Tatarstan, and also drones were spotted over Moscow. Here are the details.
Bright explosions in Tatarstan. Guests in the capital of the Russian Federation. And an endless blackout in Belgorod. It seems the special military operation really is going according to plan. I wonder, is this what Putin wanted?
A thief should be in prison, but there are nuances.
Explosions where no one expected them at all. 1,200 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, Tatarstan. One of Russia's key oil regions has come under drone attack.
Is it on fire there too, or what?
We're talking about the Kalekinskaya oil pumping station, one of the main hubs of Russia's pipeline system.
This is one of the key oil pumping stations on the territory of the Russian Federation, which carries out accordingly the pumping and sorting of oil products for further transportation through the Druzhba pipeline. In other words, it is a crucial component of the Druzhba pipeline.
Belgorod also has its own atmosphere, and apparently the locals don't quite like it.
It's just the talk of the town.
Moscow is the city where important decisions are made. A city that for years was assured to be out of reach. And now, more and more often, drones appear in the sky over the capital.
Moscow is paralyzed. The sky is closed. 100 Ukrainian armed forces drones have turned the capital of Mordor into a panic zone.
And while UAVs are fully establishing order in Russia, Ukraine continues to receive support from its allies. It's just that in 2026, Germany plans to deliver the Iris-T air defense missile system and the Sky Ranger 35 anti-aircraft system.
We can say that Germany is a key military technical partner of the defense forces of Ukraine. It is worth noting the deliveries of air defense missile systems from Norway. These are the highly advanced NASAM surface-to-air defense missile systems, which are widely recognized and regarded as being among the very best in the world, currently in operation across the globe.
But Ukraine is not only receiving weapons from its allies, it is also expanding cooperation in weapons production. Recently, France announced the expansion of its partnership with Ukraine in the field of drone usage.
I also traveled to Kiev to try to work with the Ministry of Defense in very innovative areas, such as drones. I think we will return to this issue again. It is truly necessary to build a full-fledged strategic partnership on drones in a very short time frame. This year,
Ukraine will receive about 10,000 strike drones. All of this is the product of joint Ukrainian-German production. And by the end of the year, it is planned to open another 10 similar joint ventures.
We are already buying everything we possibly can when it comes to drones. We are already training our soldiers and will continue to improve our efforts every day to become better when it comes to drones, because this is part of the future, part of the warfare of the future, and in fact it is already the present.
Ukraine is rapidly ramping up its own production of weapons and drones. One of the most notable achievements is the development of its own cruise missiles, Flamingo. But Kyiv is not standing still and is already opening up opportunities to export its own military products. Of course, first and foremost, meeting the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. The main areas of such cooperation are the Baltic countries, Northern Europe, Germany, and the United Kingdom.
European countries and the United States are interested in expanding military technical cooperation with the Ukrainian side, and the expansion of the sales market is quite remarkable. Ukrainian strike systems, first and foremost drones.
No one knows how much longer the war will last. Only one thing is clear. Putin's Russia will never achieve its goals. The Ukrainian armed forces will definitely drive the uninvited guests from their homeland.
Footage has appeared online showing a Ukrainian Flamingo missile hitting the Votkinsky plant in Russia. This plant is considered one of the key producers of ballistic missiles, including the Iskander-M and Oreshnik systems, as well as nuclear launchers. The strike happened at the end of last week. The Flamingo disabled one of plant's key workshops. American economic interests were violated. Ukraine received a demarche from the United States after a drone strike on the port of Novorossiysk. This refers to November 2025. At that time, infrastructure of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium was damaged. This pipeline transports American, Kazakh and Russian oil. For better understanding, the Caspian Pipeline is one of the largest taxpayers in Russia. And where does Russian tax money go? That's right, to the war. Honestly, the situation looks strange. First, I have not seen reports that Russia received a demarche after striking an American enterprise in Ukraine, I mean the Mondelez factory. I assume that this is also a violation of American interests. Maybe such a warning did exist, but it was not made public. Second, if such a warning did exist, Mondelez facilities have now been attacked by Russia for the second time. So the first American warning did not work. The question is simple. How many violations of American interests by Russia will lead to a strong reaction from Washington? And what will that reaction be? Third, how can you combine fighting the Kremlin's criminal regime with indirectly supporting the actions of that same regime? Does that truly serve American interests? It would be interesting to hear clear answers. Over the past 24 hours, Russia has lost at least 1,070 occupiers killed and wounded. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, that is already 1,262,490 invaders. In the last day alone, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 5 armored combat vehicles, 29 artillery systems and dozens of other pieces of enemy military assets. Russia may stage a radiation incident to blame Ukraine. This is reported by the Institute for the Study of War. According to ISW analysts, amid failures and massive losses on the battlefield, this could be another attempt by the Kremlin to push the West to reduce support for Ukraine. At the same time, the Russian authorities are creating a picture for their domestic audience, a supposed Ukrainian threat, to justify a prolonged war and potentially a general mobilization in Russia. In the United Kingdom, officials denied Russian propaganda claims about the alleged plan to provide Ukraine with nuclear weapons or technologies to produce them. The spokesperson for the British Prime Minister said the Kremlin is simply trying to distract from its own crimes in Ukraine. More details and the real plans of partner countries in the report.
A new attempt by the Russians to dodge negotiations. The Russian Security Council has accused France and the United Kingdom of planning to transfer nuclear weapons to Ukraine.
Extremely alarming information was published today by the Foreign Intelligence Service, and there is no doubt that it is reliable. There is even an understanding, apparently, that in the future, The appearance of nuclear weapons in Ukraine was supposed to be presented as a Ukrainian domestic development. Although without any doubt, Ukrainians have absolutely no capability for their own developments, without external assistance by definition.
Russian intelligence quite remarkably obtained this information after Ukrainian President Zelensky announced that France and the United Kingdom were ready to send contingents to Ukraine.
In our understanding, up to 5,000 troops is one brigade. Britain and France, when we officially signed our declaration with all the coalition participants who wish to join, we understand that all these countries are already prepared to provide a brigade each. And there are also signals from some other countries that are ready to strengthen Ukraine with their presence in the form of a contingent.
The first to speak about the possible deployment of troops to Ukraine was the President of France, who made this statement last year.
At the moment, we have 26 countries that have officially committed to forming support forces and deploying troops on land, sea, or in the air as part of security guarantees for Ukraine the day after a ceasefire and the onset of peace.
A few days ago, the UK Defence Minister confirmed that he wants to be the one to send British troops to Ukraine because that would mean the end of the war.
We will be ready to ensure peace in the long term. This requires us to invest and prepare our forces. Keir Starmer stated that he is ready to see British troops on Ukrainian territory, and I have already allocated millions of pounds to prepare for a possible troop deployment.
But there is one but. The Russians do not agree, and most likely will never agree to such a clause in a peace treaty.
As for the potential deployment of military contingents in Ukraine, well, this is one of the fundamental underlying reasons for the strategic process of integrating, drawing Ukraine into NATO. Therefore, if any troops appear there, especially now, during the course of hostilities, we proceed from the assumption that they will be legitimate targets for destruction. And if concrete and definitive decisions are finally reached that lead to peace, to a stable, sustainable, and long-term peace for the region, then from my perspective, I simply don't see any point at all in their continued presence on the territory of Ukraine. That is absolutely all there is to the matter, plain and simple.
But what difference does it make for Russia? Will Ukraine be a full-fledged member of NATO? Or will it be a country on whose territory military centers of NATO member states are stationed? It's clear that Russia will never allow the inclusion in a peace treaty with Ukraine, if such a peace treaty ever appears at all, and I personally believe there won't be any treaty, of a clause that would regulate the possibility of any foreign troops being present on Ukrainian territory, especially troops from an alliance whose members possess nuclear weapons.
And so it turns into a vicious circle. Russia will not agree to a treaty that includes foreign contingents in Ukraine, while Ukraine will not agree to peace without clear security guarantees.
I want to clarify this to avoid any misunderstandings. We are talking about security guarantees after a ceasefire. There is not a single European Union member state that believes we should intervene in the conflict right now. We are also ready to participate and provide our own security guarantees, but all this is impossible without Russia's consent, and we are probably still a long way from that.
Or perhaps European countries are ready to deploy their troops into Ukrainian territory without Russia's consent. But Russia is being told clearly, these troops will be a legitimate target for the Russian army.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that either. If the leaders of the United Kingdom or France or other countries talking about the presence of their troops are ready to take that risk, then they can deploy their contingents right now, without waiting for the end of hostilities. And if they are not ready to take that risk, then they must understand that even after the end of hostilities, their troops will not appear on Ukrainian territory, but that is the reality.
So nothing has changed. The Europeans are ready to provide all the necessary support, while the Russians set absurd conditions for this support to stop, all the while inventing yet another round of fake news.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now is the time to subscribe, like this video and share it, so more people can see it. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. The European Union is allocating 920 million euros to stabilize Ukraine's energy system ahead of the heating season of 2026 to 2027. This was announced by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She also said that the EU will soon approve its 20th sanctions package against Russia. Meanwhile, Russia is spying on strategically important sites in Europe by buying property near them. Why does the Kremlin need this? Details next.
The Trojan horses are already in their stables, and only the Kremlin and the FSB know how many of them are hidden in Europe. Current and former employees of European intelligence agencies told The Telegraph that a number of properties across Western Europe are potentially being used as storage sites for ammunition and as safe houses for Russian agents and their accomplices. And Russia, preoccupied with Ukraine, has not yet begun its hybrid war in the West. Lacking the strength to strike NATO countries openly, the Russians resort to what they have perfected over centuries: sabotage. Moscow doesn't need much to terrorize Europeans. A sudden disruption to daily life could be caused by a severed telecommunications cable somewhere, a sudden fire, or a collapse in the transportation schedule. Long before the full-scale invasion, the Russians, preparing for confrontation, were buying up real estate nearby, near strategic and military facilities. These shots show the most high-profile special operation by the Finnish security services. It was carried out in 2018. 400 law enforcement officers from various agencies landed on Sakiluoto Island in dozens of helicopters. There they discovered a real military base.
Totaling 9 docks, a helipad, barracks, living quarters, surveillance cameras, and motion sensors. All without any specific purpose. On
this island, the special services found $3.5 million in euros in cash, as well as terabytes of data. This island belonged to the notorious company Ariston Helmi. Among its owners was named Pavel Melnikov, who, according to media reports, had citizenship in at least 3 countries: Russia, Latvia, Malta. He also had passports from several Caribbean countries and a residence permit in Hungary. Ariston Helmi bought in Finland 17 properties in the archipelago region, mostly near key maritime routes and telecommunications infrastructure, not far from the port of Turku. Throughout its entire existence, the company, which invested billions in real estate, did not show a single euro of profit. But the real bombs on EU territory are the envoys of the Russian churches. The Russian Orthodox Church has firmly spread its tentacles throughout Europe. For example, former cell attendant Georgi Suzuki recounts how Metropolitan Hilarion, who was sent to serve in Hungary in 2022, never met with parishioners but consulted every month with Russian diplomats and local authorities.
By the way, his wife, the Prime Minister, also visited. And when Hilarion served tea, he would ask me to make sweets for the wife. I made a Japanese sweet for the Prime Minister's wife, which she liked so much that she even asked for the recipe.
most often, Hilarion's meetings with the Russian ambassador and the Hungarian deputy prime minister were held one-on-one. No one else was allowed in with them, neither from the Russian nor the Hungarian side.
Several times while I was present, he even met with Orbán as well. Meetings with Orbán were less frequent, but he met very often with Zhao Shemin, the deputy prime minister.
The ROC has also built its nests in the Scandinavian countries, for example, on the outskirts of the Swedish town of Västerås, where in 2013 Rosatom bought a plot of land and very quickly built a church there. Parishioners pray right next to the country's longest runway, where there are strategic bridges over Lake Mälaren, as well as the Swedish Army General Staff in Enköping and the military communications hub.
The Russians chose this location for the church. And not without reason, because just a few kilometers from the church is the Westinghouse Electric Nuclear Fuel Assembly Plant. The distance between them is only 4.22 kilometers. Even closer, at almost 500 meters away, there is another strategic facility, the Västerås Flygplats Airport. 6 kilometers from the church is a thermal power plant and the headquarters of the energy company Melor Energy AB, an energy supplier. And almost 5 kilometers away is the ABB metallurgical plant.
The head priest of this church, Pavel Makarenko, according to Swedish investigators, received a certificate from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service itself. I'm not saying anything. Stop, don't say anything. I'm not saying anything either. What is being discussed behind the walls of these churches, which are essentially GRU agents, is unknown. What information the local parishioners are leaking to them is also a mystery. For decades, Russia has been building Augean stables on the territories of neighboring countries, as well as in the countries of its ideological opponents, and is ready to unleash them at any convenient moment.
The United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution titled Support for Lasting Peace in Ukraine. It calls for an immediate ceasefire, respect for Ukraine's territorial integrity, exchange of prisoners of war, and release of all illegally detained persons. 107 countries voted in favor, 12 voted against, 51 abstained, including the United States. Moreover, US representatives attempted to remove the clause about Ukraine's territorial integrity from the document. American diplomats explained that such wording supposedly distracts from the negotiation process. Let me share a thought. If a negotiation process does not include preserving Ukraine's territorial integrity, then this is not about peace. This is about capitulation. Do you feel the difference? One thing is when it becomes quiet because the aggressor state is forced to stop fire and receives fair punishment for its crimes. That is peace. Another thing is when the aggressor stops shooting because it already gets what it wants, the territory of another sovereign state, even without firing. That is capitulation. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and see you next time.